Hello everyone and welcome to yet another Digital Home Systems webinar. My name is Emilio Kadaris and today we are going to be going through a whole bunch of different smart lighting solutions. Now, for those of you who have joined us live, thank you so much for being here. And for those of you who are going to be watching the replay, hello in Laterland. So as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at smart lighting solutions. There's a lot to get through today, so I don't think there's too much preamble or housekeeping that we need to run with. So let's just dive right into it. Now the notes will be available as a downloadable copy from our website. So where you've registered, you will find notes there with all the diagrams and everything we're going to show you today. So without any further ado, let's get right into it and switch those lights on. Okay, Google, let there be light. There we are. Okay, so everyone, welcome to, as I mentioned, the webinar. We're here for smart lighting solutions. Okay, so first and foremost, what do smart lighting solutions mean? Essentially, lighting and setting up lighting inside someone's home or business is the most popular by far implementation and execution of Z-Wave home automation networks. So you will very likely have this question posed to you: what can I do with my lights, or can you help make my lights smart? I want them to be able to switch on and off with my smartphone or with my computer, or whatever your customer comes to you and requests. So here what we've got is we've got a collection of 3 of the most common requests that we've received from installers like yourself and also customers directly to us saying, what can I do with my lights and my Z-Wave network? So let's begin with switching lights on and off. First and foremost, you're going to need a few bits and pieces, and it always makes good practice to get all your gear beforehand and get it all set up at home and make sure that it all works, or set up at a bench somewhere, and make sure that it all works so that when you do go to the customer's property, you've got everything up and running. To switch lights on and off, or a very simple little solution here, all you will need is a Z-Wave gateway. That's a given. So in this example, we've got a Vera, but you can also use a Fibaro gateway if that's so. If that's your preference. You'll need a Z-Wave lighting module, such as a Cubino single relay or a Cubino 2 relay. You can also use a Fibaro single switch or Fibaro double switch. Lots of options out there. A button of some description. So some devices can work with the toggle switch, just your standard on-off switch, but we recommend that you use a mechanical push button, so one that you actually press like a button, such as the Clipsal 30p BPP or 60p BPP. You can also use the ones that have the LED, but that is totally up to you. And what is preferable as well is having neutral at the wall. Now, if neutral is not available at the wall, you will have a neutral somewhere along that circuit. Could perhaps be in the ceiling or at another common point. So it's good practice to find that one, but we'll dive into each one of those steps in a little bit more detail in a moment. Now, the biggest thing we need to stress here is that you need to be a qualified and a registered electrician in order to install these devices. They do go straight into the 240 volt, so you're playing with some live electricity there. It is really dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. And if you do know what you're doing, but you aren't qualified, unfortunately, you're not insured to be able to do these kinds of jobs for people. So if you are not an electrician, if you're in home automation, IT, or security background, please get in touch with an electrician. Find someone that you trust to work with, and please work together with them in order to make these solutions work. I cannot stress that enough. You do need to be an electrician to get this one up and running. So, as you can see, a little bit text heavy, but I'll summarize it there for you. Essentially, when you're installing a lighting module inside your home, the reason why we say it's better to go over to a mechanical push button is that it allows for a smoother experience when you're employing two-way switching or three-way switching, or multiples of that. That is pretty common in most people's homes. But if that's not the case and they prefer to use their toggle switches, then products such as the Qubino single relay does actually come with that setting to work with the toggle switch straight out of the box. If it isn't the case that it is set up that way, you can easily change that in your device settings on your gateway's dashboard, and I will show you how to do that later on, along with doing some automations, which is going to be quite fun. So once you have all your parts out in front of you, it's important, the next step is to locate your neutral wire. And as we mentioned, that it could be running to the wall plate just behind where you're going to install that product, or it could also be somewhere else. Could be in the ceiling, could be in the floor, could be at another common location. So please just make sure that you find out where that is. The reason why we say that you need a neutral is that a lot of devices cannot run without a neutral switch, a neutral line going into the switch. So if you don't have neutral available at all in the premises, which is a rare occasion, there are certain devices out there that you can use, but you are quite limited in terms of what you can use in that kind of setup. So for us, we always say it's best to have neutral. If you don't have that option, don't fret. There are other opportunities there. Just please get in touch with us to go through them, because that is a very unique situation, as I mentioned. More often than not, neutral will be somewhere, just find it. Now, the next step is to find out what kind of circuit you have. Important thing to remember here, everyone, is that you only need one Z-Wave lighting device, whether it's a single switch or a double switch or whatever the case is, to run on each circuit, not each light bulb. So a lot of people think that because one circuit might have 6 or 7 lights on it, it's important to have, they need to have 6 or 7 devices. Incorrect. It's one device per circuit. The only thing you need to do is make sure that the load is correct. So once you know the load that is running through that circuit, make sure it's enough to meet the minimum threshold on the device, and you can find all that information out either on our website or in the device's manual. They will actually tell you where the loads are. So once you figure that out and you know whether you're having a single-way switch, double-way switch, three-way switch, or whatever the case is, the next step is to actually wire it up. Now, we have a wiring diagram coming up for this one, so I won't spend too much time on that. But if you do not have a wiring diagram from us, feel free to look at the user manual, because they do list what the wiring requirements should be, and they show you the recommended process to take. So please make sure you follow that to the letter. If you get that wrong, you risk damaging the device and also causing more problems. If not, it just won't work if you've got the wiring wrong. So please make sure you follow what it says inside the manual. Finally, once you've got that all wired up, the next step is to include it into the gateway, and that is a very simple process. Every gateway has its own procedure. More often than not, you'll be going to a list of devices and hitting add device and following the instructions. But if you do get a little bit stuck, every device has its own inclusion process. So for the Qubino ones, for example, they simply go into inclusion mode when you power them up, or you can press a button 3 times, or you can press another button once. Just read the instructions in the manual and you can't get lost with that one. If you do come across troubles though, please get in touch with us. We can help take care of those problems before they become much larger, and that's something that we can definitely help you with. So yes, please make sure that you include it into your Z-Wave gateway, because then once you've done that, and I'll actually come back to this page, once you've done that, you can go ahead and automate all your lights. So that's going to involve scenes. It might involve some voice control, which is what I just did before to switch on the lights here in the showroom. You can use sensors, you can use a whole bunch of different things, but we will go into that later on. So let me just jump back to this wiring diagram image here. Now, this is a simple wiring diagram for a two-way setup. In the middle there, you can see we're using a GoApp or a Qubino single switch, and we've got the diagram there is exactly as you can see it on the actual device itself. Now, you can see we've got neutral wires running into it, we've got live wires running into it, and of course going to the switches themselves. If you aren't using a two-way circuit, it's really simple on this picture. You just don't include one of them and let all the cables still run to the same place. And then from there, you'll be okay. It's just important to make sure that you've got a complete circuit running through the device to the switch and then to the light bulb, as opposed to running directly to the switch from the physical switch on the wall to the light bulb and bypassing the device. You'd be surprised how often that happens. But the device does need to have power in order to be involved in this process, so please make sure you follow those instructions. Now, as I mentioned, this is available for you as a download afterwards, and you can find this directly on our knowledge base at digitalhomesystems.com.au. You do need to have your login details ready for that one. So once you've logged into our website, you will find the knowledge base there, and there's a whole bunch of different diagrams for all sorts of different situations. So it's a very valuable source. Now, the next step, the next example that we've got is dimming lights. Now, dimming modules work in very much the same way as your switching modules, so your single switch and double switch. However, dimming modules only come in the one setting, and that is a single circuit. So there is no such thing at this point as a double switch dimmer. They're all single dimmers. So if you did have multiple circuits that you wanted to dim and they all ran off one wall plate, so multiple buttons on that wall plate for multiple different circuits in the house, you will need to have one dimmer per circuit on that one too. So it's it's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at the customer's home and what they're hoping to set up. So for this setup, again, you'll need your gateway. You will need a dimming module of some description. Again, we recommend the mechanical push button and lighting circuit with neutral, preferably at the wall. We've already discussed why that's important. And again, you do need to be an electrician for this one too. So very important to make sure you do it right. Now, same as prior, we do recommend that you have a mechanical push button. However, this is a little bit more the case because the Z-Wave dimmers, they work in conjunction with the actual button itself on the wall. In your more traditional setup where you will have that on-off toggle switch, you might also have the rotating dimming resistor or capacitor. They don't work really well with the Z-Wave modules, so we don't recommend that you use that, and we do recommend that you update them to a mechanical push button. In a moment, I will show you what that looks like on an actual real copy that we've got here in the showroom. Now, second, again, then locating the neutral wire is quite important. Again, remember that it could be somewhere else. It might not be at the wall, it might be in the ceiling, in the floor, or at another common point, but you do need to have that neutral there to make it work correctly. There are some products, as I mentioned, that work without a neutral. However, you do start to lose some of the functionality when you don't have a neutral at the wall. So please be mindful that that is the case. Again, wiring up the module, follow the user manual. It is really, really important to do this properly, because if you don't, once more, it will not work, or it could potentially damage the device or the lights on the circuit. So it is really important to make sure you follow the manual on this one. And likewise, we do have a diagram here for you. Once you've got it all wired up, you include it into your gateway using the methods that it describes in the manual. Again, sometimes you might need to press a button multiple times. You might need to just power it up. Every device is different, so even though you might have done it multiple times before, please make sure that you check and see what the device that you're using today requires and follow those instructions to the T. Otherwise, it will not work for you. So please make sure you follow the manual. That's a really important one. And again, once you've got it included, you can automate it using voice control, using scenes, using triggers, and other devices as triggers. So there are lots of different things you can do there. And I have an image here for you as well of a dimming module this time. And as you can see, it looks very, very similar to the one that we had before. Slightly different in the way that it's set up in terms of the where the wires go. So just pay close attention to that. But again, if you're not using two-way, simple, just exclude one of those switches and make sure that you run it from the live and the neutral, running into your device, into your switch, and then to the light bulb itself. Now, one thing to bear in mind with dimmers though is that they do require a minimum load. So every now and again you might have the little, error in calculation, where you might not have figured out what the minimum load is for that lighting circuit. And these devices, the dimming modules, whether it be a Cubino or a Fabaro or any other brand for that matter, they do have a minimum load requirement. Now, the most common symptom that we find from people missing that minimum load requirement is a flickering, or the lights not really quite switching off, or the lights sort of pulsating from slightly off to slightly on to slightly off as they get to the lower end of the dim scale. So it isn't at the upper end. The upper end is fine because it's getting a lot more current running through the device and through the circuit. As it gets down to the lower end, people do start to notice a bit of a flicker. Very simple remedy for that one. If the lighting load isn't enough for that particular module or that particular Z-Wave device, you can get a bypass, and most of them do have that product, where it will support voltages from 0 to 12 or 0 to 10 watts, just depending on the requirement. So if you are unsure, please check in with us. And yeah, I guess this is a good time to say, please do your research when you're selecting the devices for the particular home that you're going to work on. So yes, that's dimming all sorted. And the third most common situation we have is changing colors using an RGBW. Now, RGBW LEDs are very, very exciting in the world of lighting. A lot of people do use these for a lot of different circumstances. One of them might be to create mood lighting in a particular room. Another one might be to complement a home theater system or perhaps an entertainment area. Very, very common in outdoor settings as well. So for this kind of setup, again, you're going to need your gateway, you're going to need your buttons, as mentioned previously. You'll need some suitable RGBW LED strips. Now, what I mean by suitable is that they have the right amount of voltage running through them. That can be running straight off the power, so your 240, but it most likely will be something that runs off 12 volt or thereabouts. Now, bear in mind that they do come in different lengths, so it's important for you to check with your manufacturer to see just what kind of length you'd be needing and whether you need to link up multiple LED strips. The reason why I bring that up is that RGBW modules can only handle a certain amount of power that runs through them, and the longer the LED strip, the weaker the signal gets further away, essentially. So you might need to have multiple RGBWs to be able to propagate that lighting pattern all the way through. So please make sure that you double check all of those. But you can see here on the list, they're the essentials that you will need. Now, again, a little bit of text there, but I will summarize them for you. You probably already know what's going on here. What you will need is you'll need a button to be able to switch it on and off. You will need to wire it up, wire up the RGBW module as instructed in the user manual, and you will need to include it into your gateway using the instructions that it has in the user manual once again. Once you have all that set up, you can then go and automate it and create, disco lights if that's what you please to do. There are a lot of opportunities here, everyone. So the main takeaway for all of these setups is to please make sure that, number one, you are qualified to do so and you are safely registered to install these lighting modules inside people's homes. Two, if you need to use the toggle switch, so the traditional rocker on-off style switch, please make sure that it's only during single and double switching and not using dimmers or RGBWs. They do tend to start to play around and mess around with the set, with the device. If they want to swap over to a push button, which is what we recommend, you can change the settings inside your device settings using your gateway. So rest assured, you've got both aspects covered in that one. For dimming and RGBW, however, we do recommend that you use the push button. Once you've got both of those things and you've got all your devices all set up and ready to go, please make sure that you follow the wiring diagrams or the instructions that come inside the manual. Every manual will have some wiring diagram or some instruction as to what the wiring, what wiring requirements you do need. So please make sure that you follow those. And then once you've wired it up and got it all ready to go, please include it into your gateway using the methods described in the manual. And your gateway, of course, will have a slightly different setup. So I'm going to show you in a moment what it looks like on a Vera, but if you're using a Fibaro, it might look a little bit different to what the Vera looks like. But the premise is the same. Make sure you've got everything safe, make sure it all connects together, make sure it's all wired up, get it included, and then once it's included, you can go and look at automating things. So I'm just going to share a screen with you here and show you how it all works. So in front of us here, you can see that I'm in the Vera platform. I've got my list of devices as so. I've got myself a dimmer and I've got myself a sensor. Now, where automating comes in, everyone, is that you can essentially use a scene to run or to make your lights do things without you physically having to go and press them, press the button on the wall. To do so, all you need to do is follow 3 steps. The first step is to select your trigger. Now that trigger could be a device. So in Vera, we've got here the options for device. We've got it to be a schedule or a time of day. And there's also the option to have a manual trigger where that would be using a different scene to run, this particular scene. So for this example, what I'll show you is switching the light on and off using a motion sensor. All we would do is have our device, the trigger device, to be our motion sensor. So whenever and then we've got motion sensor here is armed or disarmed and detects motion, we want that to be able to switch a light on. So whenever it detects motion, we then go next step and we have the opportunity here to say what do we want to happen. We want our dimmer to switch from the off position to the on position. And yep, 100% strength is fine for this example. And then if you want to add a delayed action, you can. A delayed action would be, to have it switch off after 30 seconds or something similar. Totally up to you if you have that one included. But then once that's there, you go to next step and then you finish off the scene. It just asks you, which scene do you want it to, what mode do you want it to run in? In Vera, you do have the option to go home, away, night, or vacation. I don't really mind for this example which mode it's in, so I'll just leave them all optional. You can also notify people. Depending on how many users you have on your Vera, you'll be able to let them know that this scene has run. So if you're using this in a security setting, let's say, for example, you wanted to switch on an outdoor light whenever a trigger was breached, but you want to notify someone who's looking after your house while you're away. You can do that through that pathway there. If you need to add any extra coding, you can do it here as well. That's for some more advanced features. Give it a room. I've just got showroom there and call it, whatever you want to call it. So maybe we'll call this one lights on just for, the purpose. Excuse me. Once you have it all there, it'll pop up in the list of scenes that you have created, and you can go ahead and test it, or you can modify it or remove it. Now, I've never run that scene, so it's going to say that it's never been run. But if I test that scene, I can click play and see if my scene works correctly. Now, because I'm sharing the screen with you, you can't actually see that the light has switched on next to me. But if I go down to the devices list, you will see that my dimmer has switched on. So I'll go ahead and switch that off, and I'll show you what how the lighting module actually is set up and how it all works. So let's go ahead and do that. Alrighty. Now, in front of me here, I have, as I mentioned, a pre-set up module. Now, this isn't how it would be wired inside a wall. Please don't follow what we've got here. This is purely for demonstration purposes only, but I'm showing you so you can see what it looks like once it's all set up and how small the device actually is. So, as you can see here, I have a light globe and we have our push button mechanical switch. Now, that is connected to our lighting module that you can see here. Now, that is a Cubino lighting module, similar to the one that we had in the diagrams prior. And I'll just spin this around so you can have a bit of a clearer image. You can see there that the wires just slot in. I'll just open that one up so you can have a little bit of a clearer view. Here we go. Hold on a second, there we are. So you can see that the wires do go straight into the module, and then they go from a power source and straight into the light. So yeah, please make sure that you follow the instructions in the user manual. Now, the reason why we have a push button switch is it makes it really simple. Person wants to switch a light on, they come and press the button, light switches on, they press the button again, light switches off. And then in terms of dimming, it's really straightforward. They just press the button to switch it on, and let's say they want to dim that light down because it's too bright, you press and hold, and the light will start to dim. And there you are. So that's a really, really simple solution there. That's an example of dimming, but it would look very, very similar if you had a single switch or a double switch. The double switch being the one where you can run two different circuits off the one module. But again, that is only for switching lights on and off. So I'm just going to jump back. Okay, so here are some ideas that we have for automation and what options you have available to you. So we have a multi-sensor, which I've got here as this is a Fibaro that I'm going to show you. You can see here on the screen. They look like a little golf ball, and essentially what this will do is just detect motion and also detect temperature and and light levels on that particular device. But they are fairly similar. Dome also make one. You can use Filio, you can use Aotech. There are a number of different brands out there, but essentially you can have a multi-sensor which switches, you can use as a trigger, as we showed in the scene prior, to switch lights on and off. If you place them strategically throughout the house and throughout hallways, you can get them to also be security sensors, but to switch on a light at night to create a nice, comfortable way to walk through. You can also use a scene controller, as you see there on the notes. One example is the Remotech ZRC90. That has a whole bunch of different buttons on it, and you can go ahead and program those buttons to do different things. Finally, you can use voice control such as Amazon products or Google products. That's something that I demonstrated earlier. To do that, they do have their own pathway, so please make sure again that you look at the manual and you follow the instructions. If you do get lost with that one, you can find out more on our knowledge base. We do have a step-by-step breakdown on how to connect a Vera or a Fibaro to those voice automation pathways. Those voice control pathways. So if you do want some step-by-step instructions, please jump on our website and have a look. We are fresh out of time, so I can't take any live Q&A questions. However, if you do have a question, please type it in the chat. We are going to have a look at that afterwards, and I will be able to answer your questions for you as best as we possibly can. If you're watching on the replay, please remember that you can go ahead and type in those questions just down the bottom there of your screen. So any questions, fire away, and we'll do our best to answer them as quickly as possible. Alternatively, if you don't want to ask questions using this platform, you can always email us for something more detailed. Addresses there you can see on the screen. You've got Office, you've got Emilio, which is myself. You also have Jersey, who is one of our directors. So feel free to send an email through if you do have any questions. And finally, our next webinar is soon to be released. So please stay tuned. If you have any suggestions, or if you have any topics that are really, really exciting for you and you want to learn more about them, please let us know. You can send us an email, as I mentioned on the slide prior, and let us know what you're looking for. Otherwise, we do have them in the works. We're just not ready to release them yet. So please keep an eye online at digitalhomesystems.com.au. That is where you will find them all, just like you have found these ones where you can go ahead and register for them. So that is our presentation all done for today. As I mentioned, it's pretty content heavy. The notes will be available, and you are very welcome to watch this one as often as you like to really help embed some of what we went through today. Once more, everyone, thank you so much for your attendance. My name is Emilio Kadaris, and it has been an absolute pleasure being here on the webinar with you. I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Take care and goodbye.